This episode of Beer with Nat is brought to you by me. Hey everyone, Nat here. I don't normally run ads on the podcast, but this season I've got my own shameless plug. I wrote a book. Available on March 19th in the UK and April 28th in the US, Beer, Taste the Evolution in 50 Styles is a taster's guide through the history of beer. To learn more and pre-order your copy, visit beerwithnat.com/book. Okay, time for the show. Welcome back to Beer with Nat. On every episode, I share a beer and a chat with people who do what they love for a living. They work in the beer industry. Today's guest is Natalie Davie, Transformation Manager at Camden Town Brewery. Natalie tells us what a transformation manager does, how she got the job, and why it's the perfect role for her. We also talk about what it was really like to be on her side of the business when Camden Town Brewery was acquired by AB InBev in 2015. Finally, Natalie shares her experience of navigating the beer industry, not only as a woman of color, but also as a new parent. And of course, what she enjoys most about being a part of it. Here she is.
Hey. I thought I'd bring two, just in case.
We'll keep chatting for hours afterwards.
In the Hells Zone.
It's such a beautiful pour, like that, all that foam on top, really lovely golden color.
It's so
okay, so
bright.
what are we drinking?
We are drinking Camden Hells Lager. I had a real think about what I was going to bring, and I thought this is the beer that, it's the heart of the whole company, and it just keeps getting better and better, so I had to bring it.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why not to.
Cheers.
Cheers. It's just such an easy drinking lager.
It really is.
Did you drink this before you came to Camden, and so it's kind of been a...
No.
Oh, so this is a discovery for you once you got to the business.
And the only beer, I'll tell you about my Camden origin story in more detail, but the only beer I'd had before I started was Wit.
Oh, wow, okay.
I was not a beer person.
Okay.
I had, the perception that I think a lot of people have about beer, which is it's fizzy, tasteless.
Yep, it's all boring, fizzy yellow stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, or boring brown bitter, depending on whether you're talking about cask ale or lager. Yep.
But yeah, when I started, we had Hells, and we also did unfiltered Hells, which is now only on at the brewery bar, sadly. But yeah, fell in love with it. It's just so, like you said, it's so easy to drink, and the flavour profile, once I went to a lot of sensory sessions just because, we were all in one arch, so it was kind of impossible not to.
You could listen in to what everyone's doing.
Yeah. But it's a really lovely flavour profile.
Yeah, I think it's a really good
breadiness.
Intro lager, because the Helles for some people isn't bitter enough, but a German Pils is sometimes too bitter. It's supposed to have this bracing bitterness, so then Helles sits right in the middle of the two, so you've got the breadiness and then you've got the bitterness, but not too much.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a really delicious beer.
It just finishes so clean as well.
Yeah.
You just keep drinking more and more.
Well, I'm glad we've got two massive bottles. That's perfect. So, yeah, if people haven't figured out yet, you work for Camden Town Brewery.
Yes.
And you've recently had a promotion to Transformation Manager. Not that I'm sure
so
what that
fancy.
means. Tell me about your promotion and how you got into the role that you're in now.
I was sort of hoping that a kind of project managery job would come up, but as I was sort of continuing in my job, it hadn't really happened. And then our sales director became the MD, and I thought, well, if I don't ask for what I want now, then I'm never going to do it. So I sat down with him and essentially pitched the role and saying that I'd seen a gap of there are so many different projects going on, everyone is incredibly busy, I'm very good at coordinating, let me coordinate people. And he said, okay, let me think about it. Went away, came back a month later and said, okay, how do you feel about this role?
That's awesome.
Which I wasn't expecting at all. You
just thought you'd put it out there and...
I thought I'd put it out there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And at least I didn't have the regret, but it actually turned into this great role.
It's really fit for you. Mm-hmm. Tell me what your day-to-day looks like.
Incredibly varied. It's a role that's, I guess in other businesses it's called change manager, but basically any projects that involve working across departments, delivering change to the business, lots of coordination. All of my roles have been coordination based, so it's kind of what I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And it's identifying the gaps in the business that are slowing people down, are creating the most pain, and then figuring out with them what's the best solution to meet those requirements.
Yeah.
So yeah, working on loads of different projects.
Can you give an example of one or two that you're
Yeah,
working
so
on at the moment?
we're building a data hub. So we have lots of clunky Excel spreadsheets
Oh, yep.
that are all saved on the server with sort of lots of different versions, and reporting is quite onerous. So we're trying to ease that
Streamline
transition.
everything. Okay.
Yes, into something that's a bit more user-friendly.
Yeah.
And that we can kind of use to make everyone's lives easier.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? As the business grows, the spreadsheet is okay.
Yeah.
But that if someone's got one version open and saves it in a different place, oh, that sounds like a headache.
Portfolio as well, so all of our seasonals, our new special beers. Again, lots of different departments involved, from marketing to brewery to logistics. So that's my job, is to coordinate everyone, because people are so busy and the day-to-day just kind of sideswipes people.
Yeah, well, you sound like the perfect person to do it, as you've been with the business since 2013. So you've really seen it grow, and like you said, probably seen every department while you were all sharing a tiny arch.
Yeah.
So what role did you start in at Camden, and then how did you work up to the one you're in now?
I started as orders coordinator, which was sort of a hybrid of customer service and logistics, because back then we were delivering everything directly out of the arches ourselves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had 2 big transit vans, we had 1 small caddy van, and then we used Addison Lee a lot.
Yeah, I can
A
imagine.
lot.
And was it still mostly London-based customers?
Yep,
at the time?
London-based. We had also started delivering to wholesalers, so we had pallet trucks coming down the Tiny Mews.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we were in Waitrose, was the only grocer that we were in, so we've been working with them for years.
Yeah.
And a little bit of export, but not a lot. You just picked up things that were sort of lying around that needed someone to do them. So all of that was me and another girl. We kind of shared the responsibilities.
How big was the team at that time when you got started?
Oh, Lord. I think in the office there were only about 8 of us.
Oh, my word. Wow.
We were kind of one-person departments. I think we had 3 sales reps and 1 logistics person. It was tiny.
Much tinier.
It was tiny. I think altogether across the whole company, including the bar staff and the horseshoe, were probably about 50 people.
Okay.
So yeah.
And where are you now? Do you know the total count?
Last count was 199 before the company
my
meeting,
goodness.
and we've definitely hired people since then, so just over 200.
Yeah, so that really shows where you started and how the business has grown during your 7 years there. My goodness.
It's very weird when you don't know everyone's name.
Yeah, right. Especially because you've had that experience of probably knowing everyone's name, everyone's projects they're working on, what's coming in, what's going out.
Yeah, and I mean that's the huge challenge, and that's why my new role is so good. Is because
you get to get involved with everybody's business. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so how then over those 7 years has what you've been doing changed?
It's specialised. So I formed a customer service team, me and 1 other person.
Better than just you.
And then we hired 1 more. So I was doing customer service, and when we moved to our third-party logistics team, so running that team for a couple of years. And then my role changed to customer supply, so moving away from the direct delivery and into working with the wholesalers, the big pub groups, the grocers. Then I went on maternity leave.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, I moved into the Stockholm warehouse manager role at Enfield, which was just totally different.
Yeah.
It's
left a smaller brewery to come to a much, much bigger one.
Yeah. And when I had left, Enfield had got up and running, but it was still sort of finding its feet. When I came back, it was full blown. It was just about to go 24/7. It was really eye-opening of like, oh wow, I think we grew up.
On the scale, yeah. During your 7 years, not only was the business growing massively, then it was acquired in 2015 by AB InBev, which is the world's biggest brewery. So that was quite a big change, and then of course showed the bigger growth trajectory that was on the way.
For sure.
And you were there throughout it all. We'll come back to sort of what that experience was like for you. Were you getting training from, anyone at AB InBev, learning how to do the new things, or it was just learning as you go? This needs to happen, let me figure out a way to do it.
It was basically learning as I went. I mean, they have been supporting the team in some areas, but in terms of the day-to-day running, not really.
Yeah,
they've been very, very
hands
off. I think they recognise, we've got it sorted, and we can manage it, but just one challenge after another with the rate of growth, with the brewery going 24/7 and moving into a role where I didn't have that much experience. It felt like going back to when I first started at Camden.
Oh, wow. And then learning all these new processes.
Yep.
So were you doing any of the raw materials ordering and any of the packaging ordering, or you were just dealing with the beer once it was made, getting it out to
Yeah,
the customers?
it was outbound. I didn't do any of the raw materials side of things.
Okay.
But yeah, I think had I been doing that, I would have maybe had some sort of breakdown and crying
So
behind a stack of kegs.
Need to get the beer out to people. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because when you think about all of the bits that go into beer, yeah, I think we don't think about all of the different materials that are required, at least for ingredients, and then various packaging formats and things like
the
that.
packaging and the design and all the compliance that goes alongside of it, which is something that I've been dealing with more in my new role, of just making sure all of that with the new beers and the specials, making sure that all of that is in place.
That's a great
and,
point. Do we have the ABV on there and any
yeah.
required labeling things that need to be on there? Yeah, so you're constantly learning new things, it seems like.
For sure, but it's kind of trying to accommodate all of the new projects and the new challenges that come in, and trying to keep the core values in place. Service has always been, like Jasper would always talk about service. He was from restaurant background, and that was really, really important to him, which is why
having this focus on hospitality.
Exactly, which is why, on a Friday, if the vans were full, I would be booking all those Addison leads, because you cannot have a tap going dry over the weekend. It's just not acceptable. So.
Yeah, so understanding early what the commitments are for the business.
For sure.
And that you don't want to let your customers down. Well, that sounds like a lot of tough Friday afternoons for you, but you made many happy customers.
Worth it, definitely worth it.
Yeah, being in the customer service role, you know you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So what were you doing before you came to beer that gave you the experience to then be able to jump into, a logistics sort of role?
I love saying
Or was it
this.
something totally different?
I was working for a fashion company, which is obviously very beer related.
I went from baby food to beer, so
did you really?
I've got a weird story myself. Yep.
Awesome. But it was a logistics-based role, so my position at Net-a-Porter was retail coordinator. I went from customer service into retail coordinator, which was essentially making sure shipments of clothes made it from the supplier to the warehouse. So that
point A to point B. Okay,
exactly.
So you're using those same skills.
Production, forecasting, all of the operational side of things, and then making sure it got processed through the warehouse, all of the SKUs were set up, so lots of very similar aspects, for sure. Okay. And I was there, I worked with that company for about 5 years, I think. Yeah, 5 years. And then I fancied a change, because it felt, I was in the outlet side of things, and it felt very much like a small company. And as it grew, it sort of specialised the role to the point that it wasn't kind of fun anymore for me. Didn't have that sort of independence, the ability to kind of dictate your workload. It was very much like you're a cog in a huge machine.
Okay.
So I started job hunting, and then I had my engagement party at the Grafton, which is obviously just around the corner from the brewery. And one of my friends brought his friend, who I got chatting to, and I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I work just around the corner at Camden Town Brewery." And he was telling me about his role. So he was doing the raw materials ordering.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, that sounds like fun. And I went on the website, and there was the orders coordinator role. And I read the description, and I thought, I could do that. That's like my job.
Yeah.
And I applied, and I got a call. I weirdly had the week off when I applied, and I got a call saying, "Oh, can you come in for an interview?" I was like, "I am free right now." And they went, "Okay, come in now."
Come on down.
So I hopped on the bus. Everyone was having Friday lunch outside. I had my interview in the bar, really informal, which meant that I didn't freak myself out like I normally do about interviews.
So that feels rather meant to be. The fact that you spoke to him, saw the job, got to come right down for the interview.
Definitely.
And were there any pieces that weren't in your skill set when you came to the role, or were you able to say, "Oh, I like to organize, I'm good at creating systems," and you were able to just jump right in?
The organising bit, the customer service bit, absolutely fine. Managing delivery vans,
oh dear,
less
that sounds
part
difficult.
of a skill set. And because the vans were so integral to what we were doing, the only source of delivery, and we had a couple of incidents where drivers had done something to the van, which then turned out to be my responsibility to report and get fixed and was a bit stressful.
Oh, like all of the vans then were part of the business. So these
Yes.
weren't your third-party drivers.
No.
Oh, dear.
Our vans.
Yeah. So what did that look like?
Just a massive learning curve. And to be honest, that was the one part that I never really fell in love with because it was just a pain. It really was.
So what were the bits of the job that you did fall in love with that kept you there?
Oh, just putting a department in place yourself is so rewarding because now I can look at that team and go, that was me.
That didn't exist
That
before.
wasn't there before.
Yeah.
And I put it in place. I did a lot of work on upgrading our systems. We used something really clunky called Brewman, and we upgraded it to SAP.
Okay.
We moved to third-party logistics provider, and I was overseeing that project, which again was a massive learning curve. I didn't know what I was doing, and it was very, very scary. But I did it, and you see tangible results, I think, when it's a very small team. You can feel your fingerprints all over the business. It's
and
amazing.
really look back and see, I did that, I made that change.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you feel you had anyone then that you could go to for help, or this was, again, let me Google stuff and just crack on?
I mean, everyone was really supportive of one another. It was...
You all knew the direction you wanted the business going, and you would figure out a way to get there.
And I think because everything was moving so quickly even back then, you're sort of all in the same boat, and you're sitting in such close proximity as well. You can tell when someone is having the worst day, and everyone sort of rallied around.
You'll turn your attention to them and say, how do we sort this out?
Yeah, people hanging around in the bar, waiting, because, the office was directly above the bar, so people would probably have been there, even if they weren't there to support you. But, people hanging around in the bar, so you could come down at 9:00 in the evening and say, I've had the worst day. And they'd go, I know, here's a beer. And you're like, oh, that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
We, launched in so many pubs and did so many special beers. There were always events you would all go to as a team. And it was, it was a really special crowd of people to work with, just because I think we all felt like we were growing something together. And people that didn't subscribe to that mentality and sort of saw it as just a job, they didn't tend to stay, not because, they were forced out, but because I think it wasn't what they wanted.
Yeah.
People were saying, oh, let's do this. Let's all do it together. And they'd go, but that's not my job. And you're like, oh, no, don't do that.
Yeah. And are there many of you that have been there from the, almost beginning, like yourself?
Oh, I think I'm in the top 10 of people that have been there from the beginning. Let's see.
Wow.
I'm just trying to count in my head.
I won't make you name names because inevitably
I'll forget somebody.
Yeah.
But
so you're part of an elite.
There's a fair few people.
Yeah. An elite group out of that 200 who has been there and seen through all the changes. So yeah, let's talk about some of the changes. So of course I mentioned earlier that Camden was acquired, and I had just moved here in August of 2015, and I know the acquisition happened in December of that year. So I wasn't really all that familiar with the brand. I of course saw the news, but didn't really feel I had an emotional attachment. But it seemed that a lot of London beer fans were not too happy with the news. And I do really wonder what that must have felt like for you being on the inside. Not only was your job changing and the business that you knew changing, but then you had all these people kind of telling you why they were unhappy as well. So how did that feel going through it?
It was very, very surreal, I think. In the sort of couple of weeks before, there were a lot of meetings happening. So, small company, open plan office, big glass meeting room window. You
start twigging to things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when the announcement was made, it was quite hard to know how to react, because we'd heard about, what takeovers can be like. So that was a bit scary. But then at the same time, you've got your boss reassuring you that everything is going to be fine. So it was quite hard to know exactly how to react. So we went with, see how it goes.
Yeah.
And in the first few weeks in the business, nothing really changed. There were no sort of besuited people with shiny shoes striding around the office, and
you're like, I'm going to take your seat, and you're done now.
Exactly.
I think that is the fear that people have.
For sure, and it's totally legitimate, because there haven't really been that many takeovers where it's not gone that way, where there haven't been extreme cuts and restructuring and
this
replacements.
Is in any business as well. I think
for sure.
There's something different about beer, and particularly these craft beer brands, where I think we feel really close to them. But I worked in a baby food business, and while I was working there, it was acquired.
Yep.
And, same thing. At first, we were all a bit like, okay, what does this mean for us? And really, things were quite steady. And then they start changing financial systems and HR systems, but nothing else really trickled down for years to anyone else. So has that been a similar experience?
Yeah, I mean, we have been very good at gatekeeping the things that have made us so great as a business and as a brewery, which everyone who has led the business and been in the sort of exec team kind of level have been really, really hot on. If there's ever any discussions of we want to go into new markets, we want to make a new product, we need to brew at a different brewery, we have always said, right, the non-negotiables. So unpasteurized beer is a great example, because that's been quite the learning curve, I think, for the ABI team that we've been working with, because they just don't get it, or they haven't got it. And
of course, pasteurization extends shelf life
Yes.
of beer, and so if that's their intention, to create products that last that little bit longer, then that's naturally going to be the way that they think. But if your thought is, we're going to sell this in time and we want to keep the beer tasting fresher, then that's a commitment that you want to keep.
For sure. And I think they just don't work in that way. So it's been a very alien concept. They're like, but how do you keep the quality if you don't pasteurize the beer? I don't understand. This doesn't seem right. So it's been us kind of educating them, and the success of the brand since the acquisition, I think, is really helping to demonstrate to them that you can do things differently, you can do things our way and deliver an amazing product. But at the same time, using them as a resource, like they've got so many people that can help us in areas where we're a bit more immature, where I always think of the brewery as it's kind of like a tree that's sort of grown around itself. Like, it functions great as a tree, but there are some things that they've sort of evolved because that's just what we needed at the time. But when we need to sort of step back and go, okay, well, hang on, is this actually working? What do we need to change? What can we do to free up people's resources so that they can do something more productive or more valuable to the business? They've actually been really helpful with those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's a good point. You step back and you see this tree with all these weird limbs off it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need that one anymore. Yeah.
Honestly, the amount of conversations where it's been, oh, but we did that 3 years ago because of this really niche reason.
Yep.
But so in the company, it was very gradual change, if there was any change, and everyone was very kind of aware to sort of buffer the staff. We did have some people that wanted to work for an independent brewery, which was really sad to lose them. But at the same time, people do generally tend to move on in companies after a period of time. It would have been great to retain everyone, but I think it felt like more of a loss because we hadn't had people who had left. We hadn't kind of been going for long enough for people to want to leave for any other reason. So that was a bit of a culture shock, I think. And some customers as well, obviously. Some customers with their non-negotiable of we only want to stock independent brands, which is fair enough. But the kind of beer community was kind of brutal. The reaction was very visceral from a lot of people because I think there were so many fans, like true fans of the brand, especially following the crowdfunding, where people
had literally invested
their
own money into the business.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't, the reaction wasn't based on, oh, I gave you my money and now that what you've gone and done. It was more like, we loved you, and now you've sold out to the man. Don't you care about what we think at all? Which I can understand. We were one of the first acquisitions in London, in the UK. It was, a totally understandable response from, love of the brand and love of the business. Me personally, I didn't feel like anyone took into account what, they've since been saying on social, which is, remember that there are people involved.
And people behind these accounts, the social media handles that you're attacking all day long. Someone needs to monitor that. And
people saying really, really brutal things where I was quite active on beer Twitter for a couple of years. And, I was, people that I thought were my mates saying things about my business that was, either really harsh or speculation without coming to talk to
Asking
me
you.
about it.
Yeah.
Which was just very strange for me, seeing people saying, oh, they're probably changing all the ingredients, and I'd just been to the production meeting where everything was the same.
Where nothing had changed.
Yeah, nothing had changed. So that was quite hard. And then going to beer events after that, where you'd see people and they would sort of you'd see the look on people's faces of just like, oh, you know,
she turned up.
You've been working for, you know, you've been bought out by AB InBev, and I'm like,
oh my goodness.
But you know,
but I'm still me.
I'm still me, and I'm still doing my job, and I still have the same values, and you know, it was quite hard to deal with that.
Yeah, I did not think about that. Of course, the social media sort of attacks can be really horrible.
Yeah.
They are at that distance from behind a keyboard. But yeah, then to walk into a bar and have someone almost distance themselves.
Yeah.
Because of a decision that you had no responsibility in.
Yeah,
that's
really
really
and then, you know,
challenging.
you sort of try to defend the company because you know what it's like because you work there.
Yeah.
And to have people kind of go, oh no, it's not like that. And I'm like, really? I mean, really?
Who can provide the better, the more truthful experience here?
Yeah. So that was quite frustrating. So I sort of took a step back, and not too long after that, so early 2017, I found out I was pregnant, so I wasn't going to beer events anyway.
There you go. You found a way out of it. You found a way to take a little
helps.
break. Yeah.
So I've been trying now since so I came back to work June 2018. I think I came back to work, and yeah, I've been trying to sort of get myself back into the beer world and trying to find the time to actually go to events, which is challenging in itself.
So let's talk about that. This might be a very big assumption, but just considering the guests I have spoken to previously, many of them either don't have kids, or they're fur parents, or they have older children.
Yeah.
But I haven't really spoken to many people who are new parents in the beer industry, and I'm just really interested to know what that transition was like from being at beer events to then now saying, oh, can I bring my baby with me to said beer event? And do they feel welcome? Do I feel welcome? Do I want to be in this alcohol-centric environment, or in an environment that has kind of antisocial hours? So has it been difficult to be a new parent in your beer world?
It's been so hard to try to sort of resume normality, which I think any new parent can identify with, just
whatever
in
world they're
general,
in. Yeah.
for any kind of social event. Like even going to the pub with your friends during the day is just, it's just challenging. And it's especially because most of the events are at night. And, you know, obviously, you know, loud environment and drunk people, and you know, kind of reprioritize, especially being a first-time parent where you sort of, you're trying to get your head around the really small, demanding person in your house that kind of puts everything else on the back burner for a little bit. But it's been quite nice, actually. We brought her to Tank Party when she was about a month old.
Okay.
I think that was the first sort of big
Baby's first
outing.
beer event. Yeah.
There's a picture of her sitting on one of the kegs. She couldn't sit up herself, as sort of my husband crouching behind the keg, kind of holding her in the air.
Like, this is mom's world. Welcome.
Like,
She's just getting used to it right away.
We're responsible parents. It's totally fine.
Are there many other parents in beer that you know, or do you kind of feel like you're navigating through this on your own?
There are Parent Beer Twitter.
Oh, it's a whole
sort
new world.
of burgeoning
It's a scene that's happening.
We're
now.
all sort of finding one another.
Okay, good.
I'm not sure whether it's sort of like common topics of talking about beer, or people being awake at 3 a.m. going, why are you doing this to me?
Oh, you're up too? Okay, let's chat.
Yeah. But it's quite nice. And I think, you know, when I started at Camden, everyone was sort of in their mid to late 20s for the majority of people. No one really talking about, you know, starting a family or anything like that. And I think the beer scene in general, I would hazard a guess, is kind of the same. Lots of startups, lots of young people not really, you know, trying to sort of solidify their career before considering having kids. And now everyone's sort of come on a few years, or the people that I met when I first started working at Camden, and
we've all grown up a bit.
People are sort of going down those avenues, and it's nice to feel like you're not the only new parent sitting at home when everyone is at the event.
Yeah, seeing tweets of where they are and things like that. Do you feel that the industry should start making any changes? Is there any adjustments that you would like to see that would make you feel more welcome? Or it is just that you have different priorities now, and so then it's more about you adjusting how you spend your time?
And I mean, this kind of applies to the Camden Bar as well. Baby changing facilities would be wonderful. And actually, more facilities for more people that need it in general in drinking venues, I think, is a great shout.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Again, it's just that little signifier of almost whether you're welcome there or not, whether someone has thought about it.
Yeah.
But if most of the customers were young white men, and now those demographics are starting to change, then places need to be accommodating to all of their customers.
It's really encouraging seeing so many more conversations about that side of it, of venues and, breweries and the beer world in general, just considering, who's actually consuming the products and who's coming out for these things, and what do we actually need to take into account. So that's, really misogynistic beer labels, or pubs that have a really blatant anti-children policy, or accessibility. It seems like it's a conversation that's happening more and more frequently in a very positive way, which is really encouraging.
Yeah, and looking at all these different aspects of diversity that need to be considered.
Yeah,
but I know diversity is important to you for other reasons as well, not just being a woman in beer, but a woman of color in beer as well. How has that experience affected you in the industry?
It's quite I find it, I'm sort of split with feeling, I'm obviously incredibly proud to be a woman of colour working in beer, especially because I haven't seen that many other women of colour working in beer, which makes me feel like I'm trailblazing in a way of, there aren't that many women in operational roles that I've seen, and it makes me feel like I should represent, but then that kind of comes with pressure where you don't see that much representation, that you then kind of have to decide, are you going to try to be everything, all kind of aspects of a brown woman in beer, or am I just going to be me and do what I do and hope that that's enough and that other people will kind of come and join me? So that's quite challenging. And I always want to, I have attempted to blog in the past, and I've always wanted to write about it, but it's kind of hard to know where to start, because there's so many issues and there's so many ways of approaching the subject that it gets quite overwhelming. So I sort of stick to doing what I do and hope that that's enough.
Yeah, exactly. And just being yourself, doing your thing and loving beer, then you're allowing other people to say, oh, I can do that too.
Yep.
You don't need to be anybody other than yourself.
Yep.
You're here and you're doing what you love, so that's what counts.
And it's quite nice at work. I mean, not from the woman of colour perspective, but being one of the most sort of senior in terms of length of service at Camden, I've started to realise that people do see me as an example of, oh, you've been here a long time, you must know what you're doing. Like, some of the younger women will come and ask me advice or ask me about my experience, and I'm like, am I an adult? Yeah. Did I become an adult?
That's amazing.
And it's
and then that is all just by you being you.
Yeah.
And that you're really setting an example.
Which I'm really trying to own. We were talking, before earlier about the kind of insecurity that comes with, feeling like you don't belong in your space, you don't deserve to be in your space. So not coming from a beer background, or not being specialised in the role that I'm working in, just learning by doing, being a woman of colour, to try to put all that to one side and go, well, I'm here.
Yep.
And I deserve to be here, and I wouldn't be here if I didn't. So trying to own my own space so that I can be as good an example of myself that I can be, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. I hear you. Did you have any concerns coming to beer initially? When you first went for the role, did you think, oh, I don't know that much about beer, do I fit in? Or you just thought, this job is the right fit, I'll make it work?
I was a bit concerned that I didn't really know anything about beer. I had Gentleman's Wit. That was the only Camden beer that I'd had before I worked there.
And was that just before the interview to say, oh, let me try one of the beers?
No, I was out. So I was out with some friends at the Holborn Whippet, and my husband had gone somewhere and asked me to order him a pint. He didn't say a pint of what. So I went to the bar, got myself a glass of wine, and I saw Gentleman's Wit, and I thought, that's a funny name. So I got him a pint of it, and I was waiting for him. He was taking ages, and I took a sip, and it blew my mind. I had no idea beer could taste like that.
Yeah.
The lemoniness, the
it's really bright
the bready,
and refreshing.
the strong wheat flavour. It was unreal.
Yep.
When you're expecting something totally different from beer. And I didn't want to give it to him when he came back. It's like, do you want this wine?
Yeah, let's trade.
No, I asked for a beer. Give me my beer. So aside from that, I thought, they're going to find me out. They're going to know that I don't know what I'm doing. But you're immersed in it so much, and you're encouraged to drink it so much, with the staff allowance and all of the tastings, and you catch up.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have said you were a beer drinker, but now you consider yourself
for sure
quite a connoisseur.
Yeah.
So how did you get your beer education? Was it just immersion, or did you talk to the brewers, or were there other people on the team who wanted to teach you everything they knew?
It was mainly just, it sort of came with the territory.
Yeah.
It was very hard to get through your working week without drinking beer.
Yeah.
And then, the brewers were really, really open, really enthusiastic, which always helps with getting people engaged. I did a day in the brew house, which was
that's quite
amazing.
Cool. Yeah.
And then we were so events based and launching in new pubs, and then through the beer community, which is the thing that it's so fantastic for, is you take one step through the door, and then all of these kind of other avenues open up. You go to a launch and you meet some people, and they say, I work for this brewery, you should come down to our tap rooms. And you go to the tap room, and you meet more people, and then I went to so many of Matt Curtis's tastings up at the Duke's Head, and met loads of people through that.
Yeah, when I first moved here, I went to one as well. Yeah, and it's such a good gateway into the beer community in London.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly open and incredibly friendly, and I love beer.
So before you came to beer, you were studying philosophy at uni, is that right?
Yes, I was.
So tell me all about that and what you thought your career was going to entail that then has led you to beer.
It was kind of driven by teenage rebellion, maybe. I couldn't wait to leave home and go to university. And I was doing philosophy at school for my A-levels, and my parents were saying, you should do English literature because you're really good at English literature. And I did the whole, you can't tell me what to do, Dad, and went to study philosophy without any thought for my career or what I wanted to do. I just thought, I just need to go away and be an independent adult.
And I'll figure it out when I get there.
You're not an adult at all.
No.
So I did that, and then got to the end of my degree and went, I have no money. What am I going to do? And I had always had, since I was about 15, had part-time jobs in retail, as a lot of people did. But I actually really loved it. I loved retail. And that's how I ended up working at Net-a-Porter. Just went for the customer service team, and it was great.
And then how did you make that transition from customer service to logistics and operations? Did you just know you had a knack for systems and organizing things, as well as a knack for talking to people and winning them over on the service side?
I mean, it was the sort of business where if you volunteered yourself for extra stuff, it sort of opened the door to more extra stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd made contacts with one of the women that worked at the head office as a merchandiser through just some of the extra things that I was doing. And she used to come to the office and we would chat. And she was saying, oh, you should apply to be a retail coordinator. So I thought, okay.
It's nice. These opportunities just sort of landed in your lap, and then you've really run with them.
I mean, no, let me rephrase. I never in the past wanted to think of myself as ambitious, because, the whole ambitious woman vision in your head of just that's not a good thing. But as I've got further into my career, I've realized actually you should just go for what you want, and you should present yourself for more opportunities than you think you'll actually be qualified for. because you'll figure it out as you go along.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's the bit of your job that you enjoy the most then in this new role?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's putting all the pieces together. I always like it. It really gets to me when there's a process that's messy, that doesn't make any sense, where people aren't communicating, where things get dropped because someone's not thought about all the detail. So what I get my kicks from is when I go, okay, well let's map it out, let's rebuild it, and then it works seamlessly, or almost seamlessly, because there's always things that fall down.
Yeah.
But I find that really satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great natural progression from what you've learned just being in the business that whole time, and then with your skill set and the things that you enjoy most out of the business as well.
Yeah.
So congrats on your promotion.
Thank you.
Now, my last question for you, which I ask everyone, what do you enjoy most about being a part of the beer industry?
The thing that I enjoy most, I think, is that it is constantly changing in really exciting ways. That it's a business or an industry that's kind of finding its feet. It feels very much like it's in its infancy, or at least the craftier side of the business is. And I mean, it kind of exemplifies what I love about working at Camden, is that it never stands still. There are people always looking to innovate and develop new and exciting things, and to change the landscape of beer and of business and of across so many different fields. That it's never boring, and it creates a really tasty product as well.
And you love beer now.
Helpful.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time. We've got a whole nother bottle now to enjoy. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time, Natalie, and congrats again. Not only for your promotion, but for creating a role that's just right for you. What an inspiration. Come back next week to hear from Claire Bullen, beer writer, cookbook author, and editor-in-chief of Good Beer Hunting. Chat soon.